So there we have it, state of emergency on food security from the presidency there. Let's delve into what this means. And of course, we do remember that the lawmakers have approved the request of the President Bola Tinubu, for 500 billion naira for the palliative. So these are the issues ahead of us this morning. And to discuss this this morning is the Chief Executive Officer of Business Day Media Limited, Mr. Frank Aigbogun. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Aigbogun, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So we're having a lot of pronouncement from the president. This is very close home, talking about food security and the state of emergency. And we heard there that the special advisor, Mr. Adelelake, outlisted some of the steps that the presidency hopes to take in a couple of days. We do hope it's a couple of days. But really, from your perspective, declaring a state of emergency, what really does it mean? What should it imply?
Well, the statement from the president wasn't just an empty statement of simply announcing the declaration of national emergency. It also came with the order that matters relating to food will now be treated under the purview of the National Security Council. And I think this is quite evidential of the kind of policy direction that we should expect. It simply means that it is no longer going to be treated, that's a matter of food and food prices, will no longer be treated just as business as usual. And don't forget that what we are seeing, and this is a context, include farming downtime as a result of the insecurity in very important farming belts around the country. There is also the rising prices, or the trend of rising prices, which are impacting Nigerians, leading to a fall in demand. And it cuts both ways. When you have a fall in demand, it means that people are not eating. They are not having the nutrition that they need. And it also means when you have drop in demand, that farmers are in trouble, their inventory is rising, they are unable to sell. So it is indeed a national calamity, and it makes a lot of sense for the president to move urgently, as it does appear to be the case.
Yeah, so now saying that they will be part of the Security Council means that when they're having Security Council meetings, then we'll have stakeholders from the agriculture sector also tabling their issues there. I guess that's what that means.
Precisely. It also means that we are no longer taking the matter of insecurity in these critical farming belts simply as a matter of shooting and killing and bloodletting. We are also now going to consider it as indeed an existential threat, a threat to the livelihood of Nigerians, which means that the service chiefs indeed have their work cut out. Nigerians will be expecting very, very urgent intervention to bring down the level of insecurity, to attract farmers back to the farms, so that we can begin to see cultivation in the level that we deserve as a nation.
Yeah, I guess that's heartwarming, because even as of yesterday here in the program, we're talking about the issue of inflation, and we saw how inflation eased a whole % in the United States, and wondering why, in spite of the rate hike back here in Nigeria, inflation has not eased, especially food inflation. So I guess if we see a lot of positive movements and action in the security space around the farmers, perhaps that would change sentiment and over time increase supply and thereby bring down inflation.
Precisely. I mean, the matter of inflation in Nigeria is multidimensional. Business Day had its CEO forum yesterday, and a number of the CEOs who were there were saying, for instance, that while inflation is falling around the world, in Nigeria, it is still surging, which means that we perhaps don't have a good handle on what the factors are that are causing inflation in Nigeria, and we may be treating malaria instead of treating kidney ailment. So that is essentially the problem that we see in Nigeria. But back to famine and food insecurity, I don't think we all have as yet come to a fuller understanding of the rot that Nigeria has been left in after 8 years of ineptitude and incompetence. At the CEO forum yesterday, keynote speaker, Dr. Additional, was saying to us that over the last 4 years, Ethiopia has become an exporter of wheat. From being an importer of wheat in 4 years, has now become an exporter of wheat to countries including Egypt. The program under which Ethiopia managed to get to where they are now was available to Nigeria. The idea was to grow up to 6.2 million tons of wheat. As usual, Nigeria failed to take advantage. Ethiopia went ahead, made a good, impact with that, and we see where Ethiopia is today. So, we are not just dealing with insecurity, we are dealing with failure of government policy over the years, which has left Nigeria grasping for breath when it comes to food security.
All right. Also, one of the steps which Mr. Delelake talked about there was the issue of ranching, and casting our mind back a little bit about the issue of ranching or no ranching. We know some of the controversies around it. How do you see this helping to move forward this conversation and dealing with the issue of food insecurity at this time?
I'm expecting that some of the divisiveness that we saw over ranching in the last 8 years may have eased a bit. And I also expect, because that was part of the pronouncement by the presidency, that the federal government will be collaborating with the states, because in truth, all the land that farming is conducted in Nigeria belong to the states. So indeed, it's the state governments really that you need to incentivize. It's the state government that you need to catalyze to work with their farmers to get farming done, even if insecurity is a matter of federal government concern. So my hope is that the government, federal government that is, will put in place a clear a set of objectives of what it wants to achieve, and can bring state governors into the room and other agencies, including multilateral partners, just to ensure that we can actually get going. The federal government also said that they were going to energize virtually all of the 12 river basin, in Nigeria, that are significant tools, for irrigation, for farming. So there is already some idea in terms of what the federal government will do, but it makes a lot of sense that it begins very quickly this promised collaboration with the 36 state governments.
And we hope this time that the federal government is talking about, looking the way of agriculture, that there'll also be attention given to improving the farming tools. So we are no longer just practicing subsistence farming. And then we'll also talk about the issue of adding value to these raw materials, and not just, we put it on the ground, it grows, we take it out and sell it.
I agree. I mean, there is the need to also improve fertilizer availability. Thankfully, we are now able to produce fertilizer in Nigeria locally at home. So we need to ensure that the farmers have the fertilizer, to put in the ground and to be able to get good harvest. There's also the need for improved seedlings. I mean, Dr. Adesina was saying yesterday that the progress that Ethiopia has made relies essentially on the availability of improved wheat seedlings that has raised output per hectare from 1.2 metric tons that we see in Nigeria today to something like 5 or 6 metric tons per hectare in Ethiopia. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. This has to be approached from a multi-sectoral. There's also the need for funding as well to ensure that those who are going into farm, but also importantly, while you support peasant farmers, there is that requirement, in my view, to ensure that we bring in large-scale mechanized farmers into the picture as well.
Then just before we let you go, we also know that the president has gotten the approval for the 500 billion naira for palliatives. And I think I saw somewhere it's going to be 8,000 naira for households. We've talked a whole lot about what palliative should be employed, to get adequate impacts for the removal of subsidy and the spilling impacts. But I mean, how do you think this 500 billion naira could be best used for optimum impact?
Well, I think for me, there are 2 comments that I'd like to make there. Firstly, there is, in my view, a need to increase whatever it is that the federal government is making available. 500 billion will not cover it at all. It will have to run into into trillions for you to make the impact that the federal government seeks to make. A second and more fundamental view for me is that palliatives tend to just provide a bandage around the wound. Palliatives will not heal the wound. So there is a need for government to move very quickly to begin to enthrone policies that are far reaching in impact, that are enduring and sustainable. I just look at palliatives with a pinch of salt, and that's my view about palliatives. They only put a bandage around the wound.
All right, but I guess it will also beg the question, if you say like 500 billion naira will not be enough, then we may begin to ask, how much has the federal government saved in 1 month of not paying subsidy, and what's the money going to be used for? Perhaps that will buffer the 500 billion naira we're talking about.
Well, I mean, again, that is a conversation for another day. The question about how much the government of the federal government is saving. A governor was speaking to me yesterday, and I recall that Business Day have done a story on this last week, that if everything were to go into the federation account, you could see the FAC post doubling. But the governor said to me that, you know what, NNPC over the years has not been properly funded for a subsidy or under recovery of subsidy. So, and you are aware that NNPC said it's been owed about 2.8 trillion. So I'd imagine that the about 400 billion savings from subsidy from the day that monthly, from the day that subsidy was removed, a good part of that will initially go into covering the big hole that the Buhari government dug at NNPC, before it can begin to then flow into FAC allocation.
Sounds like Nigerians will still have to wait a bit until that hole is covered before they can feel the impact. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Frank Iwogon, the Chief Executive Officer of Business Day Media Limited. Thank you for your time this morning.
Bye-bye.